All right, we appear to be live. All right, so cameras on, lights, camera, action. All right, I'll say ETM Hotep. Welcome the viewers and those who will be watching the archive. Welcome to another Divine Words Wednesdays and hanging out with the Seshew Medew Netcher. Tonight we're gonna continue with our Divine Words Wednesdays, where we take different small inscriptions and we demonstrate that the transliterations and the translations, the methods for doing so. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and while I do that, something I forgot last time. We can go through the panel, and everyone on the panel, if you can introduce yourself, just like a roll call, go down the line and introduce yourself, and I'll set up my screen.
ETM Hotep. This is Brother June out here in Seattle, Washington. Hotep. DN Chen, Ankh Ujah Seneb. May you all be given life, prosperity, and health. Hotep.
If you all can see the avatars, you all can go down the line and introduce yourself.
Hotep family, this is Antoine Germain. Glad to be sitting on this session of Divine Words Wednesday. Looking forward to learning some more about the methods to translate and transliterate hieroglyphics accurately.
ETM Hotep, Dua, Duau, Rennie, Kofi, Paisa. Thank you all for tuning in.
ETM Hotep, this is Damian Everly, by way of Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hotep.
Hotep, I'm Brother Chris. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Subscribe and follow us every Wednesday.
Hotep, this is Tonika, and welcome to Divine Words Wednesday. Hotep.
Did we get everybody? All right, well.
We just missing the Senwir Atiba. Shout out.
All right. And also myself, this is Wajau. And so now you all should be able to see my screen.
You.
All right. So again, it always does that. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone to Divine Words Wednesday with the Seshew Medew Netcher. And the Seshew Medew Netcher, we have a Facebook group, but we're not just a Facebook group. We are a group of individuals, like-minded individuals with aspirations of being true scribes of divine words. So we use the word Seshew Medew Netcher to mean loyal scribes of divine words, because we are loyal to this process of learning Medew Netcher, or Sesh Medew Netcher itself. So we embrace the importance of learning the languages of Kemet as a means to enter the world of Ancient Kemet and having a meeting of the minds with the illustrious civilization, society, culture, and the people responsible for contributing so much to the world, whether realized or not. If you notice, I say the languages of Kemet, because there were several languages that were spoken in Kemet, and Egyptologists refer to these different languages as one continuum, and they will call it different stages of the language. But we recognize that there were more than one language spoken in Kemet. So we learn the language, and for the purposes of meeting in the minds of the people that are responsible for their civilization. Everyone talks about Kemet and how great Kemet is and how much it's contributed to the world, but yet people seem to stop at the commercialization of Kemet or the romanticizing of Kemet and not really try to tap into what were the ingredients that went into the civilization, what were the ingredients that went into the people's minds in order for the people to invent and to be so creative and to be so ingenious in the things that was done and left behind. So in order to find out, or in order to figure that out, one of the ways is to learn the language. We have to be able to allow the ancestors to speak for themselves. A lot of people say let the ancestors speak, or pay reverence or homage to the ancestors, but those ancestors that are particular to the Nile Valley, they left a plethora of information for us to use as a resource in order to dig through and utilize, see what we can apply for us in this day and time so that we can map out our future. So one of the ways is to learn the language. We have to learn the language. So our purpose for doing the Divine Words Wednesdays is to emphasize the correct method by demonstrating examples of how Sesh Medew Netcher, or the hieroglyphic script, is translated. And in doing so, we also address three things. One, that the Sesh Medew Netcher script has been deciphered. Two, the methods for doing so, which we will show. And then three, we demonstrate that with time, discipline, and patience, anyone can do it. Because, we're all learning, and we can all learn together. Some of us are more, has spent more time in it than others, and we can share and help each other along. All right. So the four main steps, or the translation method. Now, there's four main steps to the method, and these are steps that everyone goes through. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner, a novice, or an expert, or even if you actually were back in time speaking the language. These four steps are the same steps that you would do. It's just that you would do it a lot faster depending on your proficiency in it. Step one is to determine the direction in which the signs are to be read. Step two is to identify and document each individual sign. Step three, group the signs into words to be searched in dictionaries. And step four, come up with a sensible translation. So like I said, these four steps are done by everyone. It's just that obviously on the one hand, if you were a fluent speaker, if we were back in ancient times, identifying and documenting, step two, identifying and documenting each individual sign, that would probably be very rare for you to do, because you would already know what these signs were based on growing up and learning the language and learning to read. And same thing with step one. Those things would be fast, but it's just a step that you would take. It would just be very, very fast. Step three, group signs into words to be searched in the dictionaries. That too will be a lot faster if you were more proficient or more used to the language. But just like in English, we speak English every day, but yet we still have to use dictionaries from time to time. So I'm sure this goes with any language. And step four, come up with a sensible translation. This is the meanings of different words, and you would grow into that if we were speaking the language from birth. All right, but regardless, these four steps are the four steps that everyone must follow. Okay, so for this Wednesday, we have chosen to do a transliteration and translation of a plate 37 in the Papyrus of Ani, so-called Book of the Dead, but it's more properly called the Peret Imheru, coming forth by day. All right, so we have chosen plate 37, which is the last plate of this particular papyrus. And if you notice, if you can see my cursor, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns of text within this scene. And then over to the left, we have 3 columns of text. But for now, we're going to deal with with these 10 that are above here. All right, so in step 1, determining the direction in which the signs are to be read. So here's a clearer or a bigger picture of that text. If you look at the text again, this is a smaller picture so you can see the whole screen, the whole scene, excuse me. And then here's a zoom in on that particular text, and the columns are numbered. And I kind of gave it away on the direction in which to read. But Brother Robert, Brother June, if you could explain the direction in which to read these signs and why.
Okay. What I do when it comes to determining which way to read them is I look for common signs that I memorized, or I look for animals and see which way the animals are facing. So in most of these columns, I can see animals facing to the left, and other signs that I recognize also facing to the left. So we have to read this from left to right, and I just make sure and check every column, and all these seem to be going from left to right.
All right, okay. Any particular signs you can identify in the numbers? If you can see my screen.
Yeah. Well, in the first column, we see a bird, and he's facing to the left.
Mhm.
You go down, you see another sign. Looks like S29, the folded cloth, mixed with another sign. But I know that S29 usually reads that way from left to right. In column 2, we can see another bird facing to the left. So that's telling me left to right. And then most of all these other symbols in column 2 are you can't really tell, except for the up at the top. We have the a sign with the open on the right. Will let you know you can be going left to right. So yeah, usually I just go for the animals, and then other signs that I can recognize.
All right, so in column 4 we have what looks like an animal. Um, in column 5 we have another bird here. Column 8 we have a bird. Column 9 we have a bird. Column 10 we have a bird. Actually 2 birds in column 9. All right, so this particular text, as you said, is from reading from left to right. All right, now in knowing the direction, would this be rows or columns?
These will be columns going left to right, vertical.
Okay, all right, good. All right,
Yeah.
so that would cover step 1. And step 1 is pretty quick, you know, to determine direction. And as you said, you're basically looking for the animals, human body parts, and plants. Those are the easiest to detect the direction because you're going to read into the signs as if you're speaking to them. And the easiest thing to remember about that is that you never talk to anyone in the back of their head, or we shouldn't talk to people's backs or backs of their head. You face someone, you want to look in their eyes and face them and speak. So the same thing with the signs. Now there are rare occasions where the opposite is true. All right, so there is an exception to the rule, and we refer to that as retrograde text. And there's a reason for why it's going in reverse, but it happens rare. So it's easier to just become familiar with those particular inscriptions that do that, and then you'll know, okay, well, this particular inscription is known to have retrograde within it, and then you won't be thrown off by that. But for the most part, we always read into well, for the most part, we read into the signs, into the face of the signs. All right. So step 2 is to identify and document each individual sign. All right. So I'm gonna go back to our picture here. So now we have 10 columns here, but for the sake of time, maybe we can just go through the first 3 columns. And I believe, Brother Damo, if you can assist us with that, and I will share. If you're going to share your screen, I'll switch it over to your screen.
Sure. All right. Step 2. We're going to be identifying the signs, each individual sign. And as we always go through each week, we always talk about the different tools you can use to help you.
We lost your screen share.
Oh, is it going? Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, I might have to bring it up on another one.
You unshare and share it back.
Yeah, let me see. Okay, so let me see if I can share it back. I'm going to bring it up on the same page. Hold on.
All right. Well,
let's
get that together. And while you're getting that together, just wanted to reiterate. One of the actually, we already said our purpose for doing this Divine Words Wednesdays, and we can't emphasize more the proper methodology. Methodology is very important. It's what determines a effective and efficient outcome, an accurate outcome, actually success based on your method. Without the proper method, you can work tirelessly at doing something. If you're not doing it with the proper method or proper application, then you're not going to be successful. So we emphasize method, and this is what we're going to be demonstrating. Looks like we're ready. I can see your screen again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so back to identifying the signs. One of the tools you want to use is a sign list organized by Sir Alec H. Gardner. He takes everything, puts them into 26 main categories. When you look at the sign, you want to see where the sign fits in each individual category, whether it's a man in his occupation, whether it's parts of birds, a wing. I mean, pretty much when you look at something, you try to decipher it. You go to a category, you try to pick it out. Now, as we're going to the first 3 rows, columns, the first one we run into looks like a enclosure with a bird inside of it. So we're going to look in building and parts of building because it looks like it's a combination of 2 signs. So the first one, we're going to take it apart. We're going to first look at, let me see, all right, here we are. Just bringing up the different enclosures, and here we find it here. We went to the buildings and parts of buildings in the O section. And there it is. That's the enclosure right there. Let's give you the logogram. What it is, a large building. As I said, it was a combination of a sign. So let's go back. The other sign we saw was a bird. Birds are in the G's. We'll look inside the G's. See if we can find that bird that was inside that enclosure. Here it is, that falcon. HR, Horus, inside the enclosure. So you take those 2 clues you have together, put them together. The capital HWT, the capital HR, you put those 2 together because the sign is a combined sign. The next one we go into looks like a basket. So we'll go into the V's because the V's category covers all the ropes, the baskets, and the bags. So we're still identifying signs. We're still in that first column. We're using our tool called the sign list, and we're going to go find it. Now, I know this is where various different baskets are located. And here we have it right here, V30 basket. You can write down the Gardner code, how it functions, logogram or determinative, or if it's a phonogram, gives you different clues. Right now, you're just gathering all the information you can on the sign list, and we'll start putting them together later on. The next sign we've seen before, we know that was in loaves and cakes. That should be real fast. We saw that when we went over the Manchu um, description, when we went and deciphered that one and translated that one, and that was X1, flat loaf, T, bread. We'll go to the next sign. And this one I don't think we've seen before, but we'll go check it in R, in temple, furniture, and sacred emblems. I've seen it before just doing work, but I'm going to tell you what category it in, and we'll go look together as we go find it. And there it is. Feather on the standard. That's that sign right there. R14, that's what we're looking for. Tells you what it is. Tells you what it means, how it functions. So we'll go to the next one. The next section we're going to look into, it's going to be the sky, earth, and water in the N section. And here we have it right here. That's that sign we see on the wall, the N section. N25, 3 hills. Says you have function as a logogram or a determinative. Different pictures of it. Let's go find the next sign. Now the next sign we've seen before. So we're going to the Z. We've seen this one in there when we translated the Shapti, the Seneb Imi, the one we did on that one. And I remember it was Z11. You've been going through the archives. I encourage you to go to the archives. Just go through them, freshen up your skills, listen to them over and over. You know, you could be doing something else, but just get familiar with it. Get familiar with the lingo. Get familiar with the talk. Get comfortable with it, and it'll become easier to you. But there it is right there, that cross. So you have function as a phonogram, and it says you can use it as M42 as well. So for kicks, we'll go to M42. It tells us to use it as M42. Let's go see what that is. Trees and plants. Let's go look at it real quick. This the alternative. It's telling you when they give you clues, you just go search. You know, detective work. So it's telling us we could also use it as a flower, and how the functions that it uses in M42, we can also use it in the Z11. All right, let's go to the next sign. Another bird. Is that what y'all see on the bird? I'm just looking at the sign list. Y'all get the bird next?
Yeah. Well, it's another the
What you
flat
get?
loaf, but then after that it's the bird. So that's
Okay.
in the G.
Yeah, birds in the G section. We'll go to the bird, find that one real quick. I think we went over this one too. I can't remember which one this was in, which inscription this was on. But go down to the birds, G36. There it is right there. Swallow. Right now we're just identifying signs. So we found it. We'll write down the Gardner code. We'll write down how it functions. We're just gathering all this information, detective work right now. We'll go to the next one. Now the next one you should be familiar with. Now, as I went through and looked at these first 3 columns, there was only 2 that I recognized that was in the monoliterals. Once again, the monoliterals are those 25 cognizance we tell you to remember, memorize, kind of like a basis, kind of like an introduction, things you need to know to get into. And I recognize 2 of them. And this one we're looking at next is one of them, the D21, the parts of the human body. If you remember that one, you know off top, that's the mouth. We'll go find it right here. D21, the mouth. It's one of those monoliterals, those core 25 we tell you just to start with. Now, ones we went through before, you know, you look at a glyph, and you might see a lot of monoliterals on it right away. This one we're doing right now in the first three columns, we only spotted two. So we'll go to the next sign, and that will be in the N section, sky, earth, and water. And if you remember, this is another one we saw when we went to the Mentu. If you went through that in the archives, you'll know we found it in that one as well. And we found it in N16. There it is, land with the grains. Ta, earth, land. Our connection function as a logogram, phonogram. Write down all the information, still identifying signs. The next one we're going to go to, we've done an arm before. I don't know if we've done this particular arm, but it's in the D section because we're talking about the parts of the human body. Remember, we found some arms before, they're always holding different things. Sometimes they're at different angles. So we're going to look in the D's. This one was down in D45. Arm with the wand. Remember all these different arms? I tell you, some arms turn down, they're holding different things, but this is the one we're looking for. This is what it's holding. Logogram are determinative, you know, sacred, and it's showing you different forms you might see it in. So we'll go to the next one, parts of the body. You know this one already, the D4, the I, and you have many instances, but once you write down the function, and once you become more familiar with it, we're just going through it real fast and just showing you step 2 to get used to the sign. Once you become more and more familiar with it down the line, you'll know how it functions and what area to fit into. But right now, we're just dealing with the basics, identifying the sign right now. So that was in the D section, the parts of the human body. We're almost done. Let's go find the stroke. That was a pretty simple one. You'll see that a couple of times on there, and it's just a simple stroke here. But as I say, it connects. It can mean various things. You just write down the different functions. All right, 2 more. We'll go to the. A lot of people seen this one's on different recreations, reprints. N6. Sky, earth, and water. This sign right here. Sun with Uranus. N6 logogram, Ra, sun. That should be a lot of familiar. You see that a lot of times when you're going through different inscriptions and see it written in different glyphs. And the last one we've seen before because we went over that one as well. We went over the Shabti of the Senef Emi, and that was the A40, man in his occupation. This is one you'll see a lot of times. You should be becoming very familiar with this one. You run into it a lot of times when you're dealing with particular text. It was the A40, the seed of God. Again, you write down how it could function. Could be used as pata, mentu, depends on where, when, variety of different angles you can come from. But again, we're just going through the basics, and those were your first 3 columns dealing with just identifying. Like I said, don't be afraid of it. Go to your sign list. Once you see it, identify the sign, go to the sign list, find it, write it down, write everything you can down to it, and we'll put it together later on in the different steps. But that's what step 2 is. Step 2 is very important. Just make sure you get everything that you can to it. Do I?
Do I?
All right, Dua. I'm sorry, my mic was muted. All right, so that's good. Excellent. And let me switch back over to my screen. All right, so hopefully you all can see my screen again. So, um, now notice while you were doing that, we couldn't see the signs on the picture. So hopefully everyone could follow along with what you were saying. So I have it back up on my screen. As you went through the signs, um, if you remember from column 1, you went from column 1 all the way to the bottom of column 3. You can see my cursor here. So you ended with A40 with the seated man or seated deity, and you began with the enclosure and then the falcon as well. Now, um, I want to point out that this particular papyrus and a lot of the Peret Meru, well, not a lot. Some of them are written in what they call cursive hieroglyphs. Egyptologists will refer to this as cursive hieroglyphs. But now, if you notice what we're used to in, as far as writing English in print or cursive, this doesn't look cursive. So that label, calling it cursive, can be a bit misleading. So we prefer to call it simplified Sesh Medew Netcher because that's exactly what it is. It's this slightly simplified version of the formal Sesh Medew Netcher that you see carved on monuments and in stone on temples and things like that. So, for example, this owl here in column 5, you can still make out that that's an owl without a doubt. Without a doubt. Um, the falcon in the column 1, the enclosure, the basket here, the raised bread loaf. All of these signs are recognizable. You can readily see them right there on the start. It's just a little bit simplified because of the tools that are used to write on papyrus. They use a reed pen with the ink, so it's not going to be chiseled or carved into stone where you can have the fine details and whether it's raised up relief or sunk in, um, those two methods. You can't do that with papyrus, so they had to simplify it, which makes sense. So I just wanted to point that out, that Egyptologists will refer to this as cursive hieroglyphs, and they say this is different than hieratic. All right, and the hieratic, if you would look at hieratic, I don't have a picture readily available to show, but if you were to look at what they call in hieratic, that's a bit more. That's when you get a little bit more cursive, and you lose the first, the recognition, some of the recognition of the signs. All right, and then when you get on into demotic, which is another script, that's when you lose all recognition of the actual pictorial way that the signs looked. And that's definitely looks cursive because if you look at the demotic script, it will remind you of Arabic, pretty much. And that will look more flowing and more cursive. So again, we refer to this as simplified Sesh Medew Netcher rather than cursive hieroglyphs. All right. And I wanted to point out something else. In column 1, this first sign, it is a combination of two signs, but this particular sign here is listed in the Gardner codes in the listing as one particular sign. All right. So although it's two signs and we looked it up, you went over it and went through each one with the enclosure and then the falcon separately, but together they're known as a sign as well, just so people will follow along. And also, like you said, Damo, that well, actually, prior to anyone trying to transliterate or translate inscriptions, there's some prerequisite information that you would have already learned and already have under your belt. And one of those things is that what you mentioned, which are to have the monoliterals memorized. And the monoliterals or uniliterals, as some people refer to them as, would be equivalent to what we call the alphabet. And these are signs that represent a single consonant, hence the word mono meaning one or uni meaning one when people use it as uniliterals or monoliterals. So these are signs that represent single consonants and they will constitute what we would call an alphabet. So having those memorized, you would readily see those um, in this example. So we have the bread loaves here will be monoliterals. So everywhere you see a bread loaf, that represent a T. You would automatically know that. The open mouth, as Brother Damo mentioned, and then scanning through, we would just recognize the here's a horned viper here, the owl. Um, let's see, we have the raised bread loaf again, but here we have a matted stool, which represents P, and just quickly going through here. Probably skipping some open mouth again, raised bread loaf. Here's a vulture, which is the G1 vulture here in column 8, if you all Can't see my cursor. I'm in column 8 at the top. And also in column 9 at the bottom here, you see the vulture. But the point is that, by the time you sit down and are ready to transliterate and translate, you would have memorized the monoliterals. So that would save you a lot of time in step 2. All right. So that would help you out. All right. So now we're going to move on.
Hold on, can I ask something real quick? Because you spoke about the combination, the first sign, the combination of two signs. Do we have that also down there? Is that S29 combined with something? It
It's
kind of looks like a folded claw. Also in column 1.
All right.
I mentioned.
Yeah, let me go. I'm gonna go to here. Here are the signs here that are represented. Now, this particular one that you're speaking about, R14, is not listed as a combination of two signs.
Okay.
But O10, as you can see, O10 is the first one here. It says a combination of O6, which is what the brother Damo pointed out, and G5, which would be the falcon. So we have the enclosure and the falcon joined together, and it represents. Now, this is the information that you would record and log down. All right. And basically, you would need the code, the Gardner code here, and then how the sign functions. So in this particular sign, it would be a logogram to represent the word or the phrase hut heru or hut her or hathor, as people know. All right. So these are all of the different signs. Basically, what Brother Damo had just gone over here. All right. So this is what you would write down. You write down column 1, or the left column here are the Gardner codes that you would document. And then you would document how the signs function. And what we mean by function is that every individual sign has a possibility to function in one of 3 different ways. All right, never in more than one way in a particular word. Okay, so it's possible to function in 3 different ways, but only one of those ways in any given word. All right, and those 3 ways are as a phonogram, which represents the sounds, as a ideogram, which represents an idea, or a logogram that represents a full word, as we see here, hut hor, the first one. And then also, lastly, as a determinative. And determinatives help for namesake. That's why they call them determinatives, but it helps to determine the meaning of the word, of the signs that precede it. All right. And we'll get into that on step 3. So now we're at step 3. So actually, after you complete step 2, now we only went through first 3 columns, but obviously you would have to go through the entire inscription. All right, and that can be tedious at first, especially as a beginner, when you don't at this point all you would have memorized would be the monoliterals, and then you would have to look up the rest of them. So obviously, as you become accustomed to doing this and seeing the signs over and over again and working with it and going through exercises, you'll memorize more signs, and it will cut down on the time that it takes for you to go through step 2. All right, but you have to go through every single column and document all of the different signs. But for the sake of time, we only went through the first 3. Now, is there any sign on here that looks peculiar or anything that you all feel that we should mention?
All right, quick question.
Okay.
Up under the is column 5 under the boat.
Mm-hmm.
That's N35.
Yes, that's a water ripple.
Okay.
And like I said, this is simplified Sesh Medew Netcher, so there will be a slight difference from the formal carving. So even though this doesn't look like an upward, up and down wavy line, it looks like a line with just strokes slashed through it. And then it's capped off on both ends, but that represents the water ripple. And then also, I don't see, yeah, we have a reed leaf here, which is missing that other facing line to kind of complete the leaf itself. But we can tell that's a relief though. So certain ones that are a little more simplified. All right.
Just real quick,
Mhm.
in your experience, have you found it easier for people to go from simplified to hieratic, or to go straight from the sign, the glyph, to hieratic, or to gradually, take the step over? I mean, have you noticed it'd be easier for people to go from the glyph to the simplified and then to the hieratic?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Actually, that question comes up quite a bit. Um, in terms of which script should people learn first, or which is the easiest script to learn. And the easiest script to learn would be Sesh Medew Netcher, which people call the hieroglyphs. And it's easiest for obvious reasons, um, and that being that they are pictures, so they represent actual things that we can identify. That the ancient Egyptians, or the Remich as we call them, or they call themselves, um, they were actual um, items in the environment. They were the flora and fauna of the environment, indigenous to the Nile Valley. All right. Um, so learning, recognizing the Sesh Medew Netcher is a lot easier than recognizing the hieratic or even the demotic script, because the formal hieroglyphs or Sesh Medew Netcher, if you notice that a lot of the different temples, even in the different eras of time, because ancient Kemet is separated between different eras of time. You have the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and then in between those you have intermediate periods and so on. But for the most part, all these signs looked pretty much the same throughout the entire history of Kemet. Now, if you go from one extreme to the other, you will, if you take a snapshot of the Old Kingdom and how things were carved, and you jumped all the way to the last era of Kemet, and you take a snapshot, yes, you will see a greater difference. But if you were to go from the Old Kingdom and walk your way towards the later periods, the changes will be very, very slight. So they're easy to recognize. And then hieratic is handwritten, and it's similar to in English. In English, we would, if you're telling someone to fill out a application or anything, or you fill out an application, you would want to print your name, address, or important information. You print it. You wouldn't want anybody to write in cursive or in handwriting, because everyone's handwriting is different. So that's why they say, hey, print your address or print your social security number. Well, you won't write that in cursive, but print your address, print your name, and so on and so forth, so it's legible, so that we can read it. You know, has no room for error. So in our process of learning the language, the goal is to obtain the meanings of the words and to learn the actual language, so that we can have a transfer of meaning, the intended meanings from the scribe's writing. What does this mean? What is this actually saying? That's our goal, is to find that out. So we're going to use the easiest way to reach that goal, which is the easiest recognizable script, which is Sesh Medew Netcher. All right. But in ancient times, the scribes, or the young scribes, or the aspiring scribes back then, they would learn hieratic because of the skill set that it needed in order to actually chisel or carve into stone. Because you have two different skills. You have the ability to draw and then the ability to carve and chisel. So you have um, an artist or artisans that were, um, or skills, being an artisan to perform the actual carving versus just the writing. All right. And then obviously the speed in which to teach and to write, and the actual medium to write on, which were pottery shards, or wood, or even papyri, things that and they also used plaster, where the plaster could be removed and replastered over again. similar to how we do use with a chalkboard, where we write on the chalkboard, then we use an eraser, write it up, erase it, and then we can write again. All right. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
And do I?
All right. So that brings us to step 3. Step 3 is to group the signs into words to be searched in the dictionaries. All right. So basically, you're taking what you've written down from step 2, and you're going to utilize some things that you would have already learned by now. At the time that you're sitting, trying to transliterate and translate, you're going to utilize some of the tools that you have learned that brought you up to this point. And I have the brother, I asked the brother Satep if you can explain and use the same 3 columns. If you can explain and show us or demonstrate how to look it up in the dictionaries.
All right. First, I'd like to start out by saying, if you look in, I hope the listeners got the book. If you don't got the book, get the book, A Beginner's Introduction to Medew Netcher by Arcebu Ujau. And on page 36, it shows you how to group the signs. So if you got the book, pull it out real quick. Go to page 36 or bookmark it or whatever, and start out that way. And then let's see. So we're doing the first 3 columns. So I'm gonna pull up my Vigus. Let me share my screen. My screen share.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So the first symbol we have Hut Haru, which is right here on page 1519 on the Vigus 2015. It's a noun, and it's O10. Let me see if y'all can see my because I don't think y'all can see my search when I search it. You see my search tab up here?
No, we can't. It's just the.
Okay. So I'll probably just have to go to the page number then, because last time you couldn't see it. So the next sign after that we have, let's see, we have Nept, which is the Ned bowl and the bread loaf. So I'm gonna type in page 2275, and it'll bring me straight there, which we have down here. It's 3 different instances. It could be a noun, an adjective, a feminine noun, or just a noun as a title. Or if it has a deity behind it, it can mean lady or mistress, which would be a feminine noun. So that's the second entry that we have. And since I can't read, since you guys can't see my search engine, I have to type in the page number. I apologize. I can't give you the Gardner codes for it before I go to the next glyph. So the next glyph is IMNTTY. You can type that in, but like I said, you can't see my search engine, so I'm gonna type in page 1706, and it brings me to a mint, which is right here, I believe, or a mentee, sorry, mentee. It basically means the west or the western or the realm of the dead, because we know the west is how the when you enter into the duat, the sun sets on the west. So we know when we see the word Amenti, we're dealing with the western side of the Nile Valley. Now, the next word is Imi, which is IMY. So I would type in page 2502, hit enter. We see the word Imi right here. And the word basically means who is in or which is in. and it ties into the last word that we just looked up. So it means who is in the West or which is in the West. We haven't got to the translation yet, but I'm just giving you just a little heads up on where we're going with this. The next word is wart. So we will be looking up lowercase. All these words are lowercase too. I apologize. I meant to say that. So it'll be lowercase WRT. If you're on your Vigus 2015, I'm going to go to page 681. Hit enter. And let's see. I have to look at this. Let me see this one time. Make sure I'm on point. Okay. All right. So this is the symbol that we're actually looking up right here. This one says canal and funerary ritual, but I'm thinking it's more along. Let's see. Okay, so we have the hills right up under it. So we're actually seeing this one down here, the great and the realm of the dead. So we're dealing with the realm of the dead. We're in the West. Who is in the West? The next word we have is Desher, I believe, and it's lowercase t, capital A, capital D, S, R. You got to put a space between the A and the D. So since you can't see my browser, I have to type in 1241. And basically, it'll be this land right. It'll be one of these right here. It'll be sacred land of the necropolis. So we're dealing with the sacred land. We're dealing with the afterworld. It's an afterworld text. After that, we have the eye and the raised bread loaf. So you would type in lowercase I, lowercase r, lowercase t. I have to go to the page number. So the page number is 65. And it'll be this symbol right here, which is I. And you got the single stroke right there, Z1. So it's literally talking about the I. After that, we have the I believe it's the cobra. I know it's Ra. So we'll type in page 1229. Hit enter. We have, let's see, here it is right here, Ra. So it's the solar disk with the cobra on there. The solar disk with cobra. And we have Z1 again. So it's literally saying Ra, or it could be literally saying the sun, depending on the context of the conversation. We know we're dealing with an afterworld text, so I will say it's dealing with the noun Ra. And I think that's the first 3 lines of the text, because I can't see the screen, but those are the dictionary entries that we have for the first 3 lines of the text that we're going over right now.
All right, good. Hopefully you all can hear me again.
Yeah, we hear you.
All right. Okay, so that's good. Let me switch back over to my screen. And we will be right there. Okay, so we should see the screen back here. All right, so, and hopefully those who are watching live, and by the way, if you have a question, there should be a Q&A app, depending on where you're watching it. If you're watching directly on YouTube, then it's not going to be there. You can actually type it in where the Facebook event was. Other than that, you can type in any questions that you may have in the Q&A app, and we'll do our best to get to them. All right. But I wanted to say that this can be very tedious at first. So that's why we emphasize patience and we emphasize discipline. And you have to have some stamina, because this can get boring very quickly if you don't have that initial interest. It depends on the reason why people learn the language. Some people will learn or just learn out of curiosity. They'll just see, the Egyptian artifacts and how beautiful it is, and they just wonder, what is it saying? What does that mean? And then it just strikes a curiosity, and then once that curiosity is fulfilled, then that's it. Um, and you won't be able to really learn the language that way, although you will learn a few of the signs, and you'll be able to you know what a few things mean. But it actually takes stamina and some staying power. You have to be disciplined to actually work with this. So it could seem boring or tedious at first, but it gets exciting, and especially like if you're a person that goes to the museums, or if you are collecting pictures, or if you have even make a trip over to Kemet or Egypt today, you'll be able to go. And the fact that you can go and you're not just looking at it, relying on a tour guide, just telling you what things are and everything, whatever's pointed out to you, if you're able to recognize the signs and actually read, um, on the spot, you're able to read and determine what's going on in the different scenes, what's being said, and things like that. That's very, very rewarding, and we can get into that. Actually, let's see, we are at step 3, right? Yeah. They want to go ahead of myself here. But since I brought it up, um, I know we have Sister Tonika, who recently went to the British Museum, and if you don't mind, if you can share your experience going to the British Museum, and based on your knowledge of the language now, how did that help you, or how did that enhance your experience, if it did at all? Maybe if you don't mind sharing your experience with us.
Hotep. No, I don't mind sharing my experience at all. I think actually I would say that I'm very glad that I actually took the time to learn the language first before visiting the museum, because it's just an empowering feeling to be able to go there and just read, get a general idea of what some of the monuments that they had, that the statues and the other little things that they had in there, what they were saying, and stuff like that. And it was really, really great. And the other thing that I would like to say was that it's just it's a very humbling feeling, and it kind of enforces this feeling of what we're trying to do, especially with the group, where it's about um, learning how to read these things with the correct using the correct method, what we call tepeseb. And also and just what it is that it's all about, because it's really nice to just be able to see the glyphs and all of that stuff, but once you are able to learn how to read, it just it's just an empowering feeling, like I said. And it actually motivates. It definitely did motivate me to want to take my time and do this thing correctly. And it's not like I said, it's just I wouldn't even want to get the feeling of microwaving this thing, as it is. This is it is a commitment that takes a long time. And when you go there and you see all these things, it kind of just it puts all that into the right perspective. And yeah, so definitely I would recommend that anyone who wants to go just learn a little bit about reading the stuff, because that would definitely add a lot to your whole experience.
Okay, good, good, excellent. And I know you've taken a lot of pictures, and hopefully from your collection of pictures, you'll be supplying us with a lot more exercises and things that we can share with everyone else. So that's really good. And also, I'm quite sure that when you see everything, especially people that actually take a trip to Kemet or Egypt itself, but even in the museums with the artifacts that they have there, it forces you to do what I mentioned earlier. Your curiosity will peak, because you'll start to wonder what was going on in the minds of the people that are responsible for these artifacts. You know, what is it saying? You have huge statues. I mean, beyond life-size statues, not just, you know, our height, you know, statues that are huge, columns that are huge, you know, false doors, things that were handcrafted, you know, by the people. Um, so it has to pique your curiosity to say, you know, what was going on in the minds of the people to not only do it but to invent it, because, you know, I say this a lot, that today we have something to reflect. We have something to look at. We have something to copy. We have something to mimic. You know, we can look in ancient Egypt, or over in Egypt, and see what's left over, and then we can make attempts to mimic it or copy it. So we have a reference point. But if we were to go back in time to the ancient times, um, that was at a time where everyone was being innovative. You know, being creative and innovative, you know, inventing things, you know, coming up with solutions, coming up with practical solutions for whatever circumstances that the people were facing at the time. Like the invention of writing itself starts off with administrative purposes, you know, for counting, for taking tolls, for logging items, for logging how many items, for trading, for dishing out rations to workers or to, you know, people in the communities and things like that. So the inventing of writing came about through special circumstances. So we're dealing with a time period where things were creative. People were being creative and innovative with the solutions at the time. So today we just have the luxury of looking at it and then seeing it and trying to duplicate that. But the key thing is we want to tap in, or we should want to tap into that genius mind that allowed the people to be creative and innovative to solve their problems in their day and time. So here we are in 2016, and we have a laundry list of problems. And we should seek solutions, but we have to have that genius mind, that same kind of mentality of success that we had back in ancient times. We need that now. So this is one of the benefits, or one of the reasons, of even learning Sesh Medew Netcher, or the hieroglyphs, so that we can tap into the minds of the people that go down in history as a successful civilization. You know, a 3 to 4 thousand long stretch, 3 to 5. You know, I'm just going to say 3 to 5 thousand year stretch of a nation, of a confederacy, or a civilization, whatever you want to call it. We have a wealth of resources there to pull from. Now, obviously, we're living in a different day and time in 2016, and we're not, you know, 5,000 years ago. So our problems will differ, but the method and the routes that we take to solve those, that's what we need to tap into. So ancient Egypt, or Kemet, is a perfect source, a perfect resource for us to do that. And the only way we could do that is to learn a language, because we have to know what was done. What are they saying? What did they document? What did they record? Because we can look at the pyramids, we could look at the statues, we could look at the temples, we could look at the Sphinx, and all these different things, and say, wow, they're beautiful. They're, you know, the eighth and ninth wonders of the world, etc. But that doesn't tell us how or why, you know, the methods of how they came up with that, or even why, you know, and then what led to their success. You know, that's what you have to tap into. So I know I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but I thank you for sharing that that experience with the museums. All right, so we are, let me put it back on my screen here. Okay, we are at step 3. Now before I go, we're still on step 3. All right, and Brother Satep, dua for that. Now, here are the dictionary entries that you went through. All right, so I'll put them up here for convenience for the video and for those who are watching live. But as you can see, one of the things that at the point of you doing step 3, like I said, there's some skills that you would have learned prior to coming to this point. And one of the main things that will help you to determine how to group the different signs would be what's called determinatives. Now, there are some words that don't have determinatives, so that's not the only method, but that's a very helpful way of determining how to group the signs. And determinatives, in short, are signs that come at the end of words, and they help to determine the meaning of the word. All right. So the more you memorize the determinatives, the faster you'll get at actually grouping the signs and knowing which signs go together to be able to look them up in a dictionary. So here are the dictionary entries, and also along with determinatives, which is one of the main ways of determining how to group the signs. But another way is to once you get familiar with a little bit more of the grammar aspects dealing with suffixes, once you can recognize the various different suffixes, and also the determinatives, suffixes, and then also the phonetic complements with what's called the biliterals and triliterals. But our sessions here on Wednesdays is not designed to be full-blown class or anything. We just want to quickly go over the method. But here are the dictionary entries for the first 3 columns. All right. And this is how it appears in the Vigus dictionary, as you saw on the screen. Now, in doing step 3, but coming from step 2 to step 3, and if you remember step 2, you document the individual signs. All right. So the goal of step 2 is for identification purposes. All right. And data collecting. So in doing so, you will write down how these signs are transliterated. All right. So each one of these signs here, you would have already written down the transliterations. Now, going from step 2 to step 3, remember step 3 is to group the signs so that you're able to look them up in a dictionary. So in grouping the signs, you will obviously have a need to group the transliterations as well. So here is an example of the transliteration for the entire inscription, columns 1 through 10. All right, this is how it will look. Now there's 2 main transliteration systems. One is called manual decodage, and the other one is diacritic. All right, and the difference between the 2 is that the manual decodage is case sensitive. So if you notice here on number 1 here, you have upper and lower case letters all throughout. With the diacritic, the reason why they call it diacritic is because you have these diacritic markings here. You have the dots, you have the lines under letters, and you have markings above letters as well. All right, and the manual decodage system was developed to help avoid having to type in the different diacritic marks. And this was mainly done for digital purposes, for emailing, for online media, and things like that, because the keyboards on our computers are not readily equipped to type in the diacritic marks. All right, but in most publications, you'll see it in the diacritic form that you see here on the screen. All right, so that's the difference. Now, in transliterating, I'm not sure if this was mentioned already, but in transliterating, it's an exact science. So you get 2 or more people transliterating the same text. We should all come away with the same exact transliteration. All right, because these are these been standardized, and this is how we can know, we can have a meeting of the minds or be in sync with each other. Now, when it comes to translations, that's where you'll get a slightly difference between different people. This is why, for example, you'll see a translation by James P. Allen from something that Alan Gardner did, or Raymond Faulkner did, or the other earlier Egyptologists. So you'll see a slight difference in the words, but as long as the main message is conveyed, then it's fine. And the reason for that is because when you go from a source language into a target language, there's rarely um, there's rarely an occasion where you'll find a one-for-one exact match. All right, because we're dealing with different grammar, different idioms that we use today that didn't exist in the past, or vice versa, idioms that existed in the past that don't exist today. So we have to express it the best we can. And the simple example I always give is Hemet Nesut, which some people may say queen means queen, and then others may say the wife of the king or the king's wife. So you may see it written in those three different ways, but we all are saying the same thing. That's just a quick example. All right. So now, speaking of translations, that's our last and final step. Is come up with a sensible translation, and we have here. We have it here, translation. And well, let me see. I want to be able to show the picture here. Go through the columns. Do any of you have the translation in front of you from that slide? I want to keep the actual picture up, and then someone can read the translation or go through the translation. Does anybody have it? If not, I'll just go ahead and read it.
I have it up.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you could just read the translation, and then we could kind of break it per column. But if you could read the full translation.
Okay, here goes the full translation, starting with column 1. Haru Nepti Imiti Words Nepti, column 2. So you want me to say the columns as I read them, or you gonna go back over that?
Okay, I see what you're doing. You're actually reading the transliteration. That's fine. That's fine as well. If you want to do that, that's good. You can keep going.
Okay. Then column 3, transliteration, Ta, Deseret, Erit, Ra. Column 4, Imiti, Hat, F, Nefer, Ib. Then column 5, M, Y, N, He, U. Column 6, Set, Hetep, N, Iri, Mayat.
Mm-hmm.
Column 7, M, Nutu,
Mm-hmm.
N, Hiswi. Column 8, Ta, Stir, Iri, R, Nesmit. Column 9, Wort, R, Det. And then column 10, Pa, Mayati. So that was the manual decoded reading of the columns 1 through 10.
Okay, and I want to say something about pronunciations, because that question comes up a lot in the classes and even, just in casual conversations on social media, dealing with the pronunciations. Today's pronunciations of how everyone is speaking, quote unquote, speaking ancient Egyptian. These pronunciations are tentative. They're just conventional pronunciations that were developed so that we'll know, so that we can discuss the language. So the early Egyptologists could discuss and talk about the language. They had to have a way to pronounce the words, but they were never intended, and they never mean to convey or imply that the way that they're pronounced today is meant to be historically accurate. So, when we say words like ma'at, or we say hut heru, nebet imet, amentet, and things like that, if we say even the word hotep, or uncle jasaneb, all these different phrases and words that we're saying, this is referred to as, some people will call it classroom pronunciation, or Egyptology speak. So Egyptology speak in this sense is not meant to be historically accurate. So these pronunciations will change because now we have projects underway to actually restore the historical pronunciations or get very close to it. You know, there's going to be there's a science to it where historical comparative linguistics is being used, which is a scientific method in order to um, figure out the historical accurate pronunciations. And then there are some pronunciations that we may not be able to recover, and it's those that we'll have to come to a consensus with. So we're gonna have a combination of uh, applying a science to pull out the accurate pronunciations, and then those where you can't, we have to come to a consensus. But I just wanted to point out that the pronunciations that you hear everybody pronounce today is based on convention. It's not based on historical accuracy. So when people ask me, you know, how do you pronounce this? You know, I always kind of pause before I answer it, and I have to kind of explain that to them or to anyone who asks me that. That these pronunciations are tentative. So they say, how do you pronounce it? I say, well, it's tentative, but you pronounce it, you know, like for example, line 10, as you see here, pa ma'ati, you know, or ta, or like let's say set hetep in ma'at. You know, you know, no matter how we slice and dice it, these are still tentative pronunciations. All right. Now, some of these tentative pronunciations may work out to be historically accurate. It's just that applying the scientific method, we can eliminate the guesswork and we can determine if it is and if it isn't. All right. So I wanted to point that out. But that's good. But I had asked about the translation, but I'm glad that you actually did that with the transliteration. So now I'm gonna go to the actual picture. Does anybody else want to read the translation for this?
Het Heru, Lady of the West, who dwells in the great realm of the deceased, close parentheses, lady. 3 starts of the sacred land, the eye of Ra. 4 that dwells in his forehead, comma, pleasant. 5 in the boat of millions of years. 6 a resting place for who has done right. 7 in boat of the blessed ones. 8 those that make thee. 9 great boat of Osiris to ferry. 10 across the truce. So,
Okay.
so straight through, Het Heru, Lady of the West, who dwells in the great of the sacred land, the eye of Ra, that dwells in his forehead, pleasant in the boat of millions of years, a resting place for who has done right in boat of the blessed ones, those that make the great boat of Osiris to ferry across the truce.
Okay, excellent. Iker, that's excellent. Now, if you notice, well, once you sit down and actually put this to practice, you'll notice that one thing that I definitely want to point out is that you'll see these different columns here, and they're numbered. Now, obviously, the numbers are not there originally, but the columns are, and these columns are divided by these lines here. Now, some people will tend, and it's easy to do this, some people will tend to think that the separation of the columns will indicate where one word ends or another word begins, or even a sentence. So I wanted to point out that that's not true. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes it just it just happens to be that way, but that's not something that you can rely on. All right. The way that the scribes actually carved, or in this particular case, drew or wrote down here, they emphasized aesthetics, and also they had to make use of the space. So you have spatial economy that they have to deal with, and then they're dealing with aesthetics as well. All right, so one word, for example, let's say, because it was something that I saw. Okay, for example, in column 7 here at the bottom here, we have the word hesi, which means, those who are blessed or, stand out. And here we just see hesi, but we have these 3 strokes here that go with this word hesi, hesiu. It pluralizes this word here. So this is actually supposed to go along with this word here. All right. And if you didn't know that, you would start with column 8 and you would kind of be puzzled because you're looking at these 3 strokes and you're wondering, well, what does that mean? Even though you can identify the signs, when it comes to doing step 3 and going into step 4, you would have a problem, if you didn't know that, or if you just assumed that these columns are the separating words. All right, so I just wanted to point that out. And another one, for example, this bottom here, we have inshet or insheet, which is determined. This boat here at the top of column 9 goes along with the bottom of column 8. It's actually the determinative. All right. I want to make sure that I didn't lose anyone. Okay, just had to check. Had some technical difficulties before. I just wanted to check. Yeah, so, and then also the bottom of column 9 and the top of column 10, this word, these signs all go together. All right, so keep that in mind, and I wanted to point that out. So that's an easy mistake, and it's easy to understand why that could be assumed because we're dealing with columns. And when we write in English, we don't separate our words. We have a certain syntax and rules that we abide by. Even when we're writing, if you're coming to the end of a row, but yet you are in the middle of a word, we would hyphenate it. So we would hyphenate the word. But in general, we don't break up our words. We won't put a space in between a word or letters that should normally go together. All right. But that's not the case here. So I just wanted to point that out. And let's see what else. Anybody else have anything else to point out on here? Yes, no, maybe so.
Can you pan out on the picture?
Okay, let me go to. Here you go. Just a big full picture.
So we can see correlated with what we were reading. So Heru Hathor, is that the Great Mother?
I'm sorry, I switched off by accident. I'm sorry, say that again.
Hathor, is that the Great Mother?
Actually, yeah, you can actually see Het Heru here. And you see the horns, the cow, in the form of a cow here, poking the head out of the west, as I believe Setep has said earlier, or someone has said earlier, how the word for west is known to be a metaphor for also the place of the deceased because of the association of a lifespan, a person's lifespan being associated with the traveling of the sun, the daily cycle of the sun. The sun rises in the morning, and that is a metaphor for birth or rebirth in some cases. And then when the sun sets, that is a metaphor for when your life sets. It ends, it comes to an end, only to be reborn again at a different time. So you see her coming out of the west. And in the inscription that we read, it's telling you Het Heru in the column 1, Nebet, which is the lady or mistress, was the feminine form of a lord. Because if it was Neb, we would say lord. but people usually don't say lordess. So it's lady, and then Amenet or Amentet, which would be of the west, the word for west here, and who dwells in Woret, which is another word for the west. Is really a word. The word Woret means great, or the great place, and the great place was known as the place where the venerated deceased dwelled, which is another way of saying the west. All right, but yes, to answer your question, and then since we panned out, we also have some other inscriptions here, so we can actually quickly go over that if someone wants to go over that. We have three small columns, and most likely it's going to identify who this figure is. Anybody want to chime in on that?
I can make out, if we if
Don't
we're
let
going
everybody jump on it at once.
well, if we're gonna break it down, the first step will be identifying which way to read them. So as we look at the glyphs, I can see that we should be reading this left to right,
Yep.
and yep, all the columns are going left to right. So the first one I noticed was that the door bolt, and then the basket with a handle,
Mm-hmm.
the mouth, and then does it have two dots under it?
Yeah, some strokes under it.
Okay.
This is not the best quality picture, but you're still on point.
And then the next we have the eye. Next we have the throne with the seated man. So so next in the beginning of the middle column,
Mm-hmm.
basket, no handle. What's that? The pool.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, I think that might be the braised bread loaf, the flat loaf X1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. And then I can't really make out the next one. I see two reed leaves. It looks like another loaf. And then I can't really make out the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Third column, I see the is that
The natural.
yeah, the Netcher sign.
What's next to that? What is that? Is that a wooden column?
Nah, that's got to be the
Uh,
Nefer sign. What is that? I think that's in the body parts, somewhere in the body parts. I forget this. I think it's the triliteral for Nefer.
All right. All right. Keep it going.
The next one that might be is that the
well,
follower? The walking stick with the gift on it, or the walking stick with the package on it? For
at the very end.
yeah, I can't really make it out.
All right.
For
Go to the ones that you can definitely make out.
yeah, and then under that is a basket. We see the Netcher sign again, and then the next one might be that jar stand. I can't really make that one out. And then it ends off with the determinative, the three hills determinative.
Okay. Does anybody see a sign that Brother Robert missed? Anybody can make it out? But that's excellent. I want to say, by the way, that's excellent because I know you were doing it off of memory in the top of your head, and that's a perfect example and demonstration of just being able to or being used to seeing these different signs, because I know you're used to seeing them, so that's why you're able to say, okay, hey, it starts off with the door bolt, the basket with the handle. You're able to call them off, even though you may not know what the words themselves mean, but at least you can fly right through recognizing the signs. So that's a good demonstration of that. But does anybody the ones that he skipped over, anybody recognize those from memory? Because also I want to say also, see, you in doing this you have to be open-minded and flexible, because that's why I say if you identify the ones that you can readily see, then sometimes that'll give you a clue to what the other ones are, because you have a whole bunch of things in your mind, and it may jar your memory for different things. But did anybody recognize anything else?
Mm, oh,
Okay. Well,
the pool. I see.
hmm
He said the pool underneath. He got the P, the T. He got the double reed leaf. Now on the right side of that reed leaf, that's where I got stuck at. I was gonna say that was
I
where your
forget the
arrows
name.
at.
I forget the name of it, but I know it's the symbol for basically meaning like abstract
Yeah,
um
Papyrus roll.
papyrus roll. Papyrus roll. That's what that is.
Oh, okay, okay, yep,
Basically
you're
meaning the
right.
great God, and it's meaning the great
Yeah,
God.
yeah, I thought it curved up there at the top. But you're right.
Yeah, see, that's when you're gonna go back and forth from identifying the sign, because now this is something that we have to mention as well, that because ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet is ancient, a lot of the artifacts, you'll find some damage, or they won't be in its pristine, pure form. So some of the signs you may be hard to make out. So that's why we have to be flexible and draw on our memory of seeing these different words or signs elsewhere. So like this particular top sign, someone may recognize this as a word, netra, or phrase, netra, right there immediately. And this last one as the word for necropolis, which is Kharet Netcher, is
Mm,
the place of the divine, or the divine place.
Yeah, because usually when we see the three hills, the determinant for the three hills is talking about a place, and it's an afterworld text. So
yeah.
it's like when we was doing it with the Waret, and it has the three hills after that, and it basically means the necropolis, or so that's what I would have tried to come up with. I would have tried to correlate it with that.
Right.
So it's saying the great God, Lord of the underworld.
hmm And the use of the hills makes sense because people were buried. They weren't buried in the municipality areas. They were buried in the west, in the deserts or in the hill areas and things. So that would make sense. So does anybody want to give it a shot at just um, translating what this is saying in full from memory, or from
Well, I'll probably group uh the first three signs grouped together, right? SKR, what's that?
hmm
Secure, Gwasir.
Yep, that's it. Second was here, and then the second column.
Uh, Neb,
Yep.
first one.
Yep.
Yeah, Neb Shed. I can't make out that sign under Neshepti or Neshep Neshe no
Kind
Neb.
of look like the Jed pillar to me.
Okay, it's now. Okay, well, I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, don't give it away.
Shatit, Shatit. What's the sign after the raised loaf under the pool?
The P.
Is that what that is?
Where you at? Point to it,
Oh, no.
Wujal.
You talking about you talking about the stool, right?
He's
Oh,
talking about
okay.
the sign. The sign right here is under the pool and next to the bread loaf.
So yeah,
Okay.
that was. So that would be the sh, T, and then the P. Shatepi. Does the you think the reed leaves probably go with that? See, that's where yeah, it would be in the dictionary.
Yeah,
Look, trying to.
I was gonna say, going from step 2 to step 3, sometimes you have to. This is where being flexible comes into play, because what you may initially, the signs that you may initially group together, once you go and look in a dictionary, you may find that you have to make some adjustments. You know, so I'm glad that we're going through this, or you're making the attempts to go through this. So just keep that in mind. But keep going.
I'll give you
Oh,
yeah. This is Clark real quick. Your SKR, that's gonna be your Sakar Wisar.
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's Vigus 1604, Vigus 2015, page 1604.
All
What
right.
is this? What does it say?
For your first three, your O34, V31, D21, SKR,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sakar,
that's the name of the deity. That's the name of the
Sakar.
deity
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that we're looking at right there.
Yeah, so your first
Mm-hmm.
column is Sakar Wisar.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We're on to the what we get for the next one.
Put in capital STP. See if something come up. Let me open mine.
No entry for STP, capital
Capital S?
capital
No.
STP.
What?
I think that's the men symbol. I mean, I need to get in my dictionary, but I think that's the men. That's the symbol for men. I think it says men,
SP.
net, men, jet. Move your cursor a little bit, Ujal.
Before what's our time right now? I don't wanna go over
Yeah,
two.
10:45. So we've probably been on about an hour and a little over an hour and 45, probably about an hour and 40 minutes.
Okay, so we have about 15 minutes. Okay, yeah. So yeah, 'cause see, this is good that you all are working this out. So so keep it up. I just don't want to go over 2 hours. That's all.
Yeah. So we knocked the first one's knocked out. The third one's knocked out too, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have Seker Wasir or Sekri Wasir. We have those strokes there. We have the account. Sekri Wasir, and that's the name of the divine being that we're looking at here. Because if you notice, see, this is where the just the familiarity with different texts and different inscriptions, and this is something that everybody will gain naturally once you just start doing it and you're putting it to practice on a regular basis. You'll start to put together words with the images and the figures that you see in the images. So you know, even before reading this, you may be a person that will know who this is, or have an idea, because this is what they call an Osirian figure, a person that's fully mummified with their hands sticking out. This is usually a position that Wasir will take, either Wasir or Ptah. You'll see Ptah doing the exact same thing. So there's only but so many Netcheru that will be displayed or depicted in this way, and Seker is one of them. So you know you may be familiar with that already, and you'll see it. So then when you start to break down the columns, you'll start to see, okay, this is Seker. So it'll just connect immediately in your mind. Seker Wasir, which is a combination between Seker and Osiris or Wasir, or Sakar and Osiris combined. All right, they're combined in this figure here. And then, I'm gonna skip to the last one because I'm gonna still give you all a chance to figure out that sign. In the last column, we know, one of the common epithets for the various different divinities, especially with Seer is concerned, or a lot of others as well. You'll have the phrase Netcher Ah, which means the great God or the great divinity, and then Neb would be the Lord, and then this is a common word, but there's a different ways that this is depicted. Right now, what that we see here is separated, but there's a variation of this as one sign. Where the standard that's on the pole, looks like it's sticking within this sign, which is Gardner code T28. It looks like it's sticking inside of this, and it's all connected together. But here we see that it's separate, and this is the necropolis. So it's basically saying the great God or the great divinity, Lord of the underworld, or Lord of the necropolis, or Lord of the place of the deceased. All right, so but back to column 2. Did anybody figure it out?
I'm thinking maybe Seshew.
Yes. Say it again.
Seshew.
Yes. Okay, good. That's exactly what it is. Shatawit.
Seshew. So, and then the other side now we're looking at below the basket would be the N37.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one that probably that's a little bit confusing after the raised bread loaf would probably be, I think, the V13, V19. 2 seconds, I'll just check it in the dictionary. Yeah, definitely the V19.
Are you saying V as in Victor, V19?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, it should be. It's something different.
Yeah, I thought it was the U30. I found it in the dictionary meaning something like secret or something like that. Shatai.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, meaning secret or hidden, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Shataw.
Okay, what would you get for that sign?
U30.
U30.
Yeah.
And that's correct.
So it'd be saying Lord of the Hidden or Lord of the Secret or something.
Yes. So you have
Oh
Neb.
yeah, definitely. Yes, that's correct.
So we have Neb, Shatawit, and that last sign. If you can see my
Right.
cursor, the last sign right there is the enclosure, the partial enclosure. Kind of giving you a hint, but it would be O1,
Yeah,
the house, or what they call it, house, but the enclosure. So
I'm
this,
on page 1311 in the Vigus. I think this is the 12th edition.
all right. But Shatawit is the place. So we're dealing with Neb Shatawit, which means Lord or Master of the hidden place or the secret place, or the hidden or secret. So and there you have it. So to say the whole thing, we have um, Sakari or Sakar or Sakari, Wasir, Neb Shatawit, Netcher A, Neb Chret Netcher. So we have Sakar Osiris, who is Lord of the secret place, the great God, Lord of the place, the divine place, or the place of deceased. All right, so now with that being said, anybody have anything else? I want to remind everyone who's watching now. First of all, thank you for staying with us, being patient with us. But I will remind that we do have classes. to learn a beginner's level of Sesh Medew Netcher, and our classes are available on the website at www.mdw-nTr.com. That's mdw-nTr.com. And on the site, you're able to purchase the book, Beginner's Introduction to Medew Netcher, the Ancient Egyptian Hieroglyphic System, as well as the flashcards. The flashcards are those monoliteros that we spoke about earlier, those signs that represent single consonants. All right, and they're 25 in all. They're actually 24 different signs, but they represent the 25 sounds of the language. All right, and those flashcards are a tremendous help because you're able to quiz yourself and study alone or with someone else. But it has all the information on the cards that you need to memorize. You have the actual sign itself or the glyph itself, and then on the reverse side you have the description, the Gardner code, and both transliteration schemes or systems. So for the one that you see on the screen, we have the vulture, and then the Gardner code is G1, and then the manual decodage is given as a capital A, and then the diacritic is given as what we call the diacritic 3. It looks like the number 3. All right, so with that said, anybody have any closing remarks or anything? I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to keep it at about 2 hours.
We did have a question from.
Oh yeah, we
from
can't leave
Facebook.
out the questions. Yeah.
Yes. So this is a question from Tony Rice, and this is what he says: I'm watching live, and I have a question. When it's time for questions and answers, what is the purpose of the building in the lower right of the picture?
Okay. That's a good question, and I guess that wasn't a good time for me to stop sharing my screen. So let me share it again. To bring the picture back up. Give me 1 second here. All right, so we are back at the picture here. He said the building on here where my cursor is. Let me blow this up. Can you all see my screen?
2.
Okay.
We've seen that building before. That was in the in the funerary procession.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. The building is the tomb. So it's the place where the deceased enters, and from there you can go into the underworld. And then there's underworld texts. There's several different underworld texts. One being it's called people say it as Amduat, but it's really Emiduat, which means that which is in the underworld or what is in the underworld. Then you have what's called the Book of Gates. The Amduat, the Book of Gates, the Book of the Two Ways, and what else? The Book of Caverns, the Book of the Earth, and those are considered underworld texts because it describes what takes place in the underworld. And the underworld is divided into, in some of the books, it's divided into 12 sections, and they call it the 12 hours of the Duat. So you have these caverns going on. You have the hours was divided by hours because it was overlaid with the day or the 24-hour cycle. So you have these 12 hours of the night. And things like that. But to answer the question, that's the tomb. All right, and as you said, Robert, you also see it in the beginning of the papyrus when you see the funeral procession. And I don't have it readily to share, but if any of you all have it, let me know. We could share that real quick on the screen.
There was another question. Another question. Is the test also available with the interactive class? I don't know what test they're talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah. Wait a minute, let me.
But I figured now would be a time we
Yeah, that's no problem.
to ask that.
Yeah, the test available Answer the question again.
All right. Is the test also available with the interactive class?
Oh yes, the test that he's talking about, or he or she's talking about, is the certification exam. And with the classes that I mentioned earlier, the classes are certified, or you receive a certificate once you show proficiency. So the certificate is a certificate of proficiency on the beginner's level. And what that means is that you're able to, or you have the tools, and you've demonstrated that you're able to transliterate and translate uh, inscriptions, basic inscriptions. So the test that's being talked about is the final exam, and that's available for the interactive course as well as the self-study course. Because both courses, the goal is to become proficient, and so it's a way that you can test yourself, and it's a way that the teacher um, can also evaluate your competency and your proficiency, and that's what the certificate will mean. And then once you receive the certificate, if you choose to, you can actually join the seshuani Netcher um, group. Because we meet quite frequently. We go through different exercises and practice. We discuss aspects of the culture. We don't limit ourselves just to learning, the script and the language. We also um, connect the dots with the language. Once we are able to look at a text, we're actually able to correct or verify some of the Egyptologist translations, such as Raymond Faulkner, such as James P. Allen, such as Gardner, such as all the other ones that are even before those guys. So we're able to actually and it's kind of empowering, because then we don't have to rely on uh, their interpretations. We are indebted to the early Egyptologists for providing the data, the raw data, because they've taken a lot of pictures. They've painstakingly, you know, redrew a lot of the temple walls, and made available, in forms of facsimiles, or reproduction and drawing, or whatever the case is. So we're indebted to the people for documenting and recording that. But nowadays, we don't have to rely on their interpretations of that data, because now we are able to learn ourselves and do it for ourselves. And then we were also able to double check which behind the interpretations and even the definitions that's given in dictionaries, because we have the tools of historical comparative linguistics and related African languages and related African cultures. Because as some people fight to deny, but Egypt is in Africa. Kemet is in Africa. It's an African, or was an African nation, empire, etc. So the people that once lived there, the descendants of the people that once lived there have migrated and moved about, with some remaining and things like that. But we can compare with related African cultures, traditions, and languages. So these are the tools that are available to us today, that early Egyptologists, it wasn't available to them, and even if it was, they did not actually. They actually admit not doing the work in the comparative fields. They will admit that, readily admit that, in the introductions to their books and things like that. So that's kind of a long answer, but yeah, that's what a quiz is, to receive a certificate. But it's available for the self-paced course and the interactive course. It's just that when you take the difference between the two courses, the self-paced course, obviously you can learn on your own time, because the way the book is written, it's a step-by-step process. As long as you follow it to a T, you'll have no problems. The interactive course is you'll be able to interact with other people that are learning with you and a teacher. So you're able to get questions answered on the spot. We're able to talk about some things that are maybe peripheral to the language, to have a better understanding of the language, and things like that. So it's a better, we learn better when we learn in groups. So the interactive course provides that for everyone, and you'll be able to get your questions answered, and a lot of extra information, just based on the discussions. All right. What any other questions from the Q&A app or online? Anybody on the panel have any comments or questions? Anything that you've seen on social
I
media lately?
I just want to say thanks to all the supporters and the people who questions and stuff like that. We appreciate the support.
All right, that's good. And I want to say, I believe Satep had logged off here, but the other day Satep was on a different hangout, and some brothers had asked him to help them out and translate something that was on a picture. It was some Egyptian text, and Satep did a very good job. I wanted to definitely acknowledge him doing a good job on that. I see that he's not with us anymore. But with that, if nobody else has anything else to discuss, we can close out this live session. And I want to say, Dua, thank you for the viewers who are watching, and then those who will be watching the archive or the video. And we'll see you next Wednesday. And also, if you have any suggestions, definitely type suggestions in the comment section on this video, or join the group, the Facebook group, Seshew Medew Netcher Facebook group. Join the group, and you can make suggestions, comments, or or just learn with all of us. All right. So because if you have a suggestion in terms of some inscription that you want to see us actually walk through or transliterate and translate, we're definitely taking. It's almost like a DJ. We're taking requests. So if you have a request, by all means, share it, and we'll do our best to get to it. So make it more exciting. Be something that we don't choose or whatever. But actually, a lot of these that we have chosen were indirectly requests, not really requests, but things that we've seen on social media or Facebook that maybe some people have posted up for the beauty of it, or some people were discussing and things like that. So we're open to that. But with that being said, I'll say Shem Hotep, which is the opposite of ETM Hotep. ETM Hotep is to welcome you with peace, but Shem Hotep is to bid you farewell in peace. So with that being said, I'll say Shem Hotep.
Shalom.